Good afternoon. This is another session of Apples of Gold, and basing this podcast on is in Proverbs 25:11. A word fitly spoken is like apples of gold in a setting of silver.
Good afternoon. This is on Matthew 18, verses 15 down through 19. And I chose this particular passage to analyze today because it is very pertinent for our day and age. We are trying so hard to keep into a place of where we don't hold any unforgiveness in our hearts. And this was a revelation that God gave me many years ago in the workplace. And it's usually a passage that is actually referred to a lot of times in a church situation, maybe even a church discipline situation, but it actually isn't limited to just churches. It's actually very pertinent for individuals with relationships of all sorts, whether it's friendships, whether it's the workplace relationships, whether it's in families or churches. That's like whatever situation you're in when you're trying to keep relationships on a godly level. And here it says in verse 15, moreover, if thy brother shall trespass against thee, go and tell him his fault between thee and him alone. If he shall hear thee, thou hast gained thy brother. All right there, when a problem comes up in a relationship, then the principle is to go to that brother or sister alone and try to explain and try to work it out and resolve where you find there's difficulty in the relationship and see if it can be resolved. And in my experience, especially in the workplace, I found that when I followed this, 99%, maybe even more than that, the relationships resolved, and it worked so wonderfully. Then it goes on to say, but if he will not hear thee, then take with thee one or two more, that in the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses every word may be established. And if he neglect to hear them, tell it unto the church. And if he neglect to hear the church, then let him be unto thee as an heathen man and a publican. So in the workplace, when somebody does not go to you privately and try to work out whatever difficulty is in the relationship, sometimes what happens in a workplace is that somebody will get upset about something, and they'll, instead of going to that person alone, they will go over their head and speak to the supervisor or whoever. And then it comes back to that original person as a correction. Well, that whole scene causes a tremendous amount of hurt. And, we don't want to add to the problem. We want to correct it. If there's a place of getting it corrected, that's what we want. And so, like I said, more than 99%, it felt like, was resolved in that situation. Now that's from my end. Like if I go to that person privately, if I figure there's a difficulty in the relationship, that works. But if that person decides to treat it in some other way, that there's nothing I can do about that. I'm only responsible for my end of this situation. Then you have to just deal with it as you can. But that has been a real guideline for me. It has kept relationships really, really good, especially in the workplace. I notice it also in, friendships, neighborhoods, the churches and everything. If, a difficulty arises, go to that person alone first. And I thought I'd share that with you. To me, it was a revelation. I never heard it preached on before, but it really works. God bless all of you, and you have a very godly afternoon. Bye for now.